Welcome back, Three Ball Walk. Another hello. Hello to the minor leagues.
Yes.
For Tim Tebow. This morning, first professional game, first professional at bat, first professional pitch. Goes opposite field, home run to left center.
Yeah.
Welcome to professional baseball.
It's not so hard, is it? It's not a hard game. You see the ball, hit the ball, and draw around the bases. That's good. We'll come back in about 4 weeks or so and see how many fastballs he sees on the first pitch fastball. If you're the pitcher there, you got to think, I'm going to just gas one by him. Oh, bad mistake.
And he did. And he went opposite field. It's interesting. I don't know if that was in Port St. Lucie, if the Mets were home, or if that was down in Jupiter where the Cardinals were at home.
I think it was on the road, but I'm not sure.
So it was in Jupiter. And Jupiter, Florida, and just about 50 miles, 45, 50 miles south of that, Miami.
Yep. Yeah. A very tough day, tough weekend for Miami. Hard to believe, hard to fathom what took place with Fernandez being killed in the boating accident. It's a tragedy on so many levels that you don't even want to necessarily explore all the different levels of it yet. I mean, there's still a whole lot yet to be learned about what happened, what went wrong. It was on the national news this morning on Good Morning America. They were covering it. And, they're about a day behind everybody else of covering.
They've got to find out if it's newsworthy first.
Well, they have to get it off Facebook, and then they take it from the Facebook report, and then they put it on their news report. So there you go. But just the tragedy of the event itself taking place. But I thought the Marlins handled it well. And a little bit after we talk about that, about our feelings about that, then we need to explore a really serious note of what that one game of being canceled might mean for the Marlins. But there's so much more than that on the human side and the personal side of losing not only, I think, and we've agreed, the best young pitcher in baseball, but a really quality young man from everybody's accounts. Definitely, kid who's 24 with a lot of money, but by all accounts, a good dude.
Yeah, and not yet, and that's what's amazing is not yet the money he would have made.
Yeah,
which is but the bottom line, and you hear it is the nasty slider, which he called the defector. The fastball, the pitching, the 29-2, the best home record of anyone with 40 starts in one ballpark, the best record ever in the history of baseball at any one ballpark. I mean, and that's not being talked about. And obviously, we're talking about it, and people talk about it, saying, and we're not going to talk about this, but he was a talent. But what's really coming out, and I think where baseball's going to miss it the most, is the excitement he brought to the game. And just watching the joy that he played with and what he meant to a community. And
certainly the Cuban-American community in Miami, that whole attachment, I don't think you have a better grasp of it than we do, but I'm not sure that anybody who's not Cuban-American and not have never lived in South Florida, Tampa, Miami, can understand that connection, that tie to the community and the loss, because of everybody knows what he went through. We know the story. Mm-hmm. Your community and their community know the feeling of the story.
And it's hard. It's and I don't want to go where I've been, and it's been rough. And I can only imagine had my mother or father been alive. And part of I remember coming to this country, and it's been 50 years, and in a day of political correctness, making fun of the way Ricky Ricardo talked is something that would never happen now.
No,
and yet it was downright funny. And Desi Arnaz was our Desi Arnaz. He was a Cuban, and we would watch, and that was just amazing how someone from a little island came and was so successful and married the biggest female comedian probably of all time, and had the biggest show for 10 years, and that was before I was born, but I Love Lucy, and that was amazing. And then whether it was Celia Cruz or whether it was Andy Garcia or Gloria Estefan or whoever it was, Cubans in this country, whether you know them personally or not, there's a bond like we are succeeding. And we can come to this country and be successful. And when one person is successful, we're all successful. And it reflects. It's almost the easiest way to explain it is my being a University of Florida Gator. When a Gator, you know, when there's a Gator that does something, it's like, go Gator. Well, doesn't he play for the Red Sox? You know, David Ross this week.
Hey,
I mean, the whole goodbye and everything. You know, that's nice, David, but he's a Gator.
He's a Gator.
You know,
Tim
Tebow, home run. It's a Gator. And you always sit there, and sometimes you're watching something, and in the middle of it, I go, Gators, and they look at me like, what? Yeah, he's a Gator, you know, and you know that. And that's how it is a lot with the Cubans. And it's funny, the one parallel that I can draw from Jose that, believe it or not, has not been mentioned, is Levon Hernandez in 1997. And the city of Miami, they gave him a key to the city. He was Cuba's son, and all these people going, live on, live on. I mean, the fascination they had. And I remember, you know, I actually went back and Googled, and I read some of those articles, one from the Herald and one from the Associated Press, the day that Levon got traded to the Giants. And they were talking to Dave Dombrowski about telling Levon he had been traded, and he broke down and cried. And then we had the press conference about an hour later, and then after the media left, I sat at Levon's locker and cried with him for about an hour. And I show up back to the office, and the people I work with, aren't you professional? I mean, it's a guy. I mean, and if you think about it, Levon was the last of all those guys we traded. We got rid of Sheffield and Bonilla and Kevin Brown and Al Leiter and Moises Alou and on and on and on, and it was work. And when Levon left, it hit me.
It's personal.
It was personal. It was a Cuban, and it hurt the whole community and everything like that.
And I think Miami learned from that, and I think Miami needs to have a Cuban-American player on their roster, if at all possible.
They forgot that lesson they learned in '97. Hopefully this time.
Yeah, now they won't. And I think the way they said goodbye, I know we've been together a couple of times over the last couple of days, so I know how emotional that is for you. So I'm trying to change the conversation to keep from going there. You know, the way that community rallied, when you see the team, you know, whatever you say about guys, we talk all the time about guys in the clubhouse, and you don't know what they're like, you don't know what's going through there, but when you see a reaction like they did,
it was overwhelming.
Then you know that that's an authentic guy that they liked. Whether you might have liked him or not, if you'd have been his teammate, you would have loved him. Mm-hmm. And you might not like his antics or whatever, you might question what he does, how he goes about the game or whatever, but inside that clubhouse, he was loved. And you can tell by the reaction of every player.
There's not a whole lot of, boy, he's really faking it up and talking about him, like making stuff up for the cameras.
And you see D. Gordon's reaction, and you see what he says, and you see him hit the home run, and you're like, oh my gosh, how can this little scrawny 140-pound guy hit one in the upper deck? And he comes back and says, well, if you don't believe in God, you should now, because there's no way I've ever hit a ball.
Did you see Aldemis Diaz, and you might not, last night?
I didn't see it last night. I mean,
you heard Cardinal shortstop?
Yeah.
Aldemis grew up in Santa Clara.
And they were teammates.
They lived 3 houses down the street from each other. Yeah. Aldemis's father is the one who taught Jose how to play baseball. And they played baseball and everything. Jose defected a few years before Aldemis did. Aldemis came over at 20, wound up, he's the shortstop for the Cardinals now, and he was told Sunday morning, he went to Mike Matheny and said, I can't play today. And he take the day off, go home, do whatever. He actually left the ballpark, went home, got a flight to Miami because they were off on Monday, and flew to Miami Sunday night, and Monday spent the entire day with Jose's mom and grandmother. And right that evening, right before the game or whatever, he had to fly back to St. Louis to play. And he played last night and came back and hit his first Major League Grand Slam. And he actually quoted D. Gordon. I don't want to take anything away from Gordon, but if people don't don't think there's a God, I don't know what's wrong with them.
So, I think that whole thing, the tragedy tends to bring us closer together as a team. Tragedy tends to bring us closer together as a community. And whatever you want to say, I know some people are probably watching this and they may say, well, he brought it on himself. They were out drinking. They were out boating. You don't know they were drinking yet. They were out boating. And there are plenty of people who say whatever. But we've all made dumb mistakes. We've all done something that the only difference is we're still here to talk about the dumb thing that we did that almost killed us, and they can't because it cost them their life. But let's transition for a moment.
And one other thing on that, and it's just what I keep thinking. And Eddie, I mean, we're here in the beautiful University of Florida Baptist Student Center studios, and I mean, it's something you've worked with college students your whole life. I mean, that is your career and everything. And he should know he worked the next. We're talking about a 24-year-old kid, and 24-year-olds have a tendency, and especially baseball players, and a lot of times I remember hearing it all the time. Well, what was he doing out at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Well, that's what time they normally.
Well, you get done with work at 11:30.
Yeah, you're
at
just
night,
winding down.
noon, midnight. You just go and wind down because you don't have to wake up. I mean, your work day isn't 9 to 5.
No.
Your work day is 9 to midnight.
And 3 to midnight.
3 to midnight, I should have said. 3 to midnight. And especially when you're a kid at home, the day before your start is the easiest day in the world. You're not throwing any bullpen, you're not doing any side work and whatever. And it was a late game Saturday night. The whole team knew he was going out on his boat.
Yeah, and he had asked several players to go with him. They all turned him down. So,
but the point is, he was a 24-year-old kid, and regardless of what winds up coming out.
Let's don't say 24-year-old kid. I hate that.
24-year-old.
He's a 24-year-old man.
Young man.
He's a young man who made an unfortunate decision to go out on a boat that night because it's an unfortunate decision because he didn't come back. If he comes back that night, he's not a 24-year-old young man that made an unfortunate decision. He's a 24-year-old man that went out and did something and came back. But the fact it didn't come back, and that's the point, is that we never know when that's going to happen. So we only got 2 minutes and something to go, so let me just throw this out. On a real note, the Marlins are 5 games back with 5, but they
mathematically eliminated last night.
But they only have 4 to play because of the game with the Braves was canceled.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you think about that.
Yeah, but
they're
you know
not going
what?
to make it either way. But
and while we're on Jose Fernandez, on the Marlins and everything, the Marlins against the Braves and the Phillies this year finished 6 games under 500.
It's amazing.
And if it wasn't for the 2 cellar dwellers in the NL East, they beat the Mets, they beat the Nationals. And that's what did them in. So if you were telling me that they missed the game against the Nationals, I'd sit there and I'd say, wow.
But if they're playing the Braves,
but it was the Braves
anyway.
It was the Braves.
I remember that we go back and watch the video. We were talking about the preseason. We were laughing because they're going to get to play the Braves and the Phillies 18 times apiece. Oh man, the Marlins are going to be there.
And that's what did
them. That's what did them in. As you think about down the stretch, as you were the last week, by the time we get to next week, playoff teams will be set, and it will actually be, I guess, probably the first playoff games will be that night when we record. I think next Tuesday, Wednesday. So you've got in the Boston can clinch tonight. They haven't clinched yet, so Toronto's still in it in that sense.
The only every division is settled except for the AL East.
Yeah.
And the Red Sox magic number is 1. So if the Blue Jays lose tonight, or if the Red Sox beat the Yankees,
they're in.
It's
so,
over.
So then you go to the wild card, and you've got Toronto up by 2 games, 1 game over Baltimore, and they play tonight. So they could either be tied or they could be 3 games up. And then you got Detroit, Seattle, and Houston. Houston's 2.5 back. Out of those teams, Detroit is 1 game back from the second wild card. So if Toronto loses tonight, or Baltimore loses tonight, they would be tied. If you had to ask me now, I'd put my money on Detroit because they play the Indians, which is tough, but the Indians have already clinched. And then they play, guess who? The Braves for 3 games. They finish with the Braves. The other wild card teams, the Orioles finish with the Yankees, the Blue Jays finish with the Red Sox, and Seattle finishes with the A's, and Houston finishes with the Angels.
the Blue Jays, for all intents and purposes, everyone, the first place in the wild card and everything like that. You don't need to finish first place in the wild card.
You just need to finish.
You need to finish second place in the wild card.
Yeah.
So the Blue Jays, I think, for the most part, are looking pretty good.
But it's still, I mean, from top to bottom, it's still only a 4-game difference. It's only 4.5. So mathematically, Houston could still be the number 1 wild card team.
Right, but the interesting thing is, if I'm the Tigers, you need the Blue Jays to win, because if
you don't want
because it is going to be harder to catch both of them than it is going to be catch the Orioles. If all of a sudden the Blue Jays knock the Orioles down back to you, then you've got to be looking at that number 2 spot.
You got to beat those. Yeah, and on the National League side, it's really anybody's guess. The Mets and the Giants are half game apart, and the Cardinals are only 1 game back. So you got 3 of those, and the Mets. I think the Mets have the easier route. They play the Marlins, who I think emotionally are done, and they play the Phillies. And but they do have to play both of those on the road. If they were at home, that would be the case. The Giants.
They played the Phillies last weekend. They'll play them again this weekend in that last game Sunday, right before the
Cardinals
Memorial
have both
game.
at home with the
Did
Reds
you see
and the Pirates.
The Sunday game, the Phillies and Mets, right before the Memorial game down in Miami?
Mm-hmm.
The Mets won 17-0. It was the worst loss in Phillies history and the biggest shutout win in the Mets history. So.
And the Giants play the Reds and the Dodgers, and so the Dodgers have a chance to knock the Giants out of it. So you know that the Dodger faithful will be out in force, even though it's in San Francisco, so that helps them out.
And we wrap up by going full circle. That Dodgers-Giants series this weekend, Vin Scully. Hope you guys watch it. Hope you guys enjoy. Hope you guys say goodbye in your own way, and hope you do the same with Jose Fernandez.
Absolutely.
It's been a tough week, and it was good being here. Enjoy it.
So next week, a little better week. Get a chance to go play ball, do so, and definitely go watch it because it's getting crunch time.
Come see me at the card show.
See the card show.
Mandarin this Saturday.
All right.
October 1st.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.